Most people think confidence is something you either have or you don't. They believe it comes from success, praise, or finally feeling ready. And when those things disappear, so does their confidence. If you've ever felt strong one day and completely unsure the next, you're not broken. You were simply taught the wrong definition of confidence. For a long time, I believed confidence meant feeling good about myself. When things were going well, I felt confident. When I failed, made mistakes, or disappointed someone, that confidence vanished. I started doubting my decisions, my voice, and my direction. I tried to fix it by reading more, achieving more, and seeking reassurance from others. None of it lasted. The real shift happened when I noticed something strange about people I deeply respected. They weren't loud. They didn't seek approval. They stayed calm under pressure, steady in uncertainty, and grounded even when life didn't go their way. Their confidence didn't fluctuate with circumstances. It came from somewhere deeper. That's when I started paying attention to books that didn't promise motivation, quick wins, or surface-level confidence. These books focused on discipline, emotional control, self-respect, and inner strength. At first, they felt uncomfortable. There were no shortcuts, no hype, and no instant results. But slowly, something changed. I began trusting myself again. Not because I felt fearless, but because I learned how to stand firm even when fear showed up. I saw the same transformation in people around me. A friend who stopped chasing validation and became calmer, more decisive, and harder to shake. A colleague who learned to control his emotions and suddenly earned respect without demanding it. A family member who built quiet discipline and developed a confidence that didn't need explaining. None of them changed overnight. They changed through small, consistent practices rooted in powerful ideas from the right books. This audiobook is about those ideas. It's not a list of books to impress you. It's a breakdown of the principles inside books that build unshakable confidence and real inner power. Confidence that doesn't collapse when you're criticized. Strength that stays with you when you're alone. A calm presence that comes from knowing you can rely on yourself. If you're listening right now and quietly questioning yourself, wondering why confidence feels so fragile, this message is for you. You don't lack talent or potential. You lack a stable inner foundation. Confidence grows when your actions align with your values, when you stop abandoning yourself to please others, and when you learn to stay present in discomfort instead of running from it. These ideas are simple, but they are not easy, and that's why they work. They require patience, repetition, and the courage to face yourself honestly every day consistently. In the next chapters, we'll explore how confidence is built through action, discipline, emotional control, and self-trust. You'll hear real examples of how these principles played out in everyday life, and how you can apply them without needing to read dozens of books or completely change who you are. This isn't about becoming louder, tougher, or someone else entirely. It's about becoming grounded, steady, unshakable from the inside out. And if you know someone who feels stuck, uncertain, or disconnected from their own strength, share this video with them. It might be exactly what they need right now to start improving their life. Chapter 1. Confidence is built, not felt. Most people believe confidence is a feeling, something that arrives one day, fully formed after enough success, praise, or preparation. They tell themselves, once I feel confident, I'll act. But this belief quietly keeps them stuck, because confidence almost never comes first. Action does. If you wait to feel confident before you speak up, take responsibility, or move forward, you may wait forever. Feelings are unstable. They change with mood, energy, sleep, stress, and other people's opinions. When confidence is built on feelings, it rises and collapses just as easily. One good day, and you feel unstoppable. One mistake or criticism, and everything falls apart. That isn't confidence. That's emotional dependence. Real confidence is something different. It's not loud. It doesn't need to be announced. It doesn't disappear when things go wrong. Real confidence is the quiet belief that you can handle yourself, even when situations are uncomfortable, uncertain, or imperfect. And that belief is not imagined, it is earned. I learned this lesson slowly, and not in a flattering way. There was a time when I avoided challenges because I didn't feel ready. I delayed decisions, avoided confrontation, and stayed silent in moments when I should have spoken. I told myself I was being patient or thoughtful. In reality, I was waiting for a feeling that never came. And the longer I waited, the weaker my self-trust became. I saw the same pattern in a close friend of mine. He was capable, intelligent, and ambitious, but he constantly hesitated. Whenever an opportunity came up, he would say, "I just don't feel confident enough yet." He believed confidence would arrive before action as a signal that it was safe to move. Months passed, then years. The confidence he was waiting for never showed up because he never gave himself proof that he could survive discomfort. Books that focus on inner power explain this clearly. Confidence is built through evidence. Not evidence to others, but evidence to yourself. Every time you do what you said you would do, especially when it's uncomfortable, you strengthen self-trust, and self-trust is the core of unshakable confidence. Think about trust for a moment. You don't trust someone because they feel reliable. You trust them because they show up consistently. You trust them because they keep their word. The same rule applies internally. When you break promises to yourself, you weaken your confidence. When you keep them, even small ones, confidence grows naturally. This is why many books emphasize starting small. Confidence doesn't require dramatic change. It requires consistency. Finish the task you said you would finish. Make the call you've been avoiding. Wake up when you said you would. Speak honestly once instead of staying silent. These actions may seem insignificant, but they accumulate. Each one sends a message. I can rely on myself. I saw this principle transform someone I worked with. He wasn't charismatic or outspoken. In fact, he was quiet. But when pressure increased, he didn't disappear. He did his work, stayed composed, and followed through. Over time, people began to trust him without him demanding respect. His confidence wasn't emotional, it was structural, built on repeated proof. Another misconception worth addressing is the idea that confident people don't feel fear. That's not true. Fear is human. Even the most grounded people feel doubt, anxiety, and uncertainty. The difference is that fear no longer controls their actions. Books that build inner strength repeat this lesson relentlessly. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is action in the presence of fear. I experienced this firsthand when I finally stopped avoiding difficult conversations. I never felt ready. I never felt calm enough. But I forced myself to act anyway. The conversations were awkward. Sometimes they didn't go well. But something important happened each time. I survived, and that survival mattered more than the outcome. Slowly, my confidence stopped depending on things going smoothly, and it began depending on my ability to face discomfort without running from it. This is why confidence built on action is resilient. When life becomes unpredictable, and it always does, emotional confidence collapses. But confidence built on self-trust remains intact. You don't need everything to go right. You only need to know that you won't abandon yourself when things go wrong. For the listener right now, this is where application begins. Stop asking yourself how confident you feel. Start asking yourself what action would build self-trust today, not tomorrow. Today. It doesn't need to be impressive. It needs to be honest. One action aligned with your values is enough to begin. There's also a deeper reason why action builds confidence. Identity follows behavior. Many books on inner power emphasize this idea. You don't act confident because you are confident. You become confident because you act in alignment with who you want to be. Every time you choose discipline over avoidance, truth over comfort, and responsibility over excuses, your identity shifts, and confidence becomes a natural byproduct. This also explains why positive thinking alone doesn't work. You can repeat affirmations all day, but if your actions contradict your words, your mind knows the truth. Confidence cannot be tricked into existence. It must be supported by behavior. When your actions and values align, confidence settles in quietly. If confidence feels fragile in your life, it doesn't mean you're weak. So it means your self-trust hasn't been trained yet, and training always starts with repetition. The books behind this audiobook don't promise instant change. They promise something better: stability, confidence that doesn't depend on mood, praise, or approval. Confidence that comes from knowing you can handle yourself. As we move forward, remember this foundation. Confidence is not something you wait for. It is something you build, step by step, through action. Every time you choose to show up instead of hide, you lay another brick. Over time, those bricks become inner power. And once that foundation is strong, confidence stops shaking when the world does. Chapter 2. Inner power comes from emotional control. Most people believe confidence comes from feeling good, but inner power comes from something far more stable. Emotional control. When your emotions run your behavior, your confidence becomes fragile. One comment can ruin your mood. One setback can shake your sense of worth. You may feel confident when life is smooth, but the moment pressure appears, that confidence collapses. True inner power shows up when things don't go your way. Think about the calmest person you've ever met under pressure. They're not emotionless. They feel frustration, fear, and disappointment like everyone else. The difference is that their emotions don't dictate their actions. They create space between feeling and reacting. And in that space, power lives. I didn't always understand this. There was a time when my confidence rose and fell entirely based on my emotional state. If I felt appreciated, I felt strong. If I felt criticized or ignored, I withdrew. I replayed conversations in my head, reacted defensively, or avoided situations altogether. I thought I was protecting myself. In reality, I was handing control of my inner world to external events. Books that focus on stoicism and self-mastery expose a hard truth. If someone else can control your emotions, they can control you. Not because they're powerful, but because you've given them access. Emotional reactivity is not weakness in character. It's a lack of training. And like any skill, emotional control can be developed. I saw this lesson clearly through a colleague I worked with for years. He was regularly placed in high-pressure situations. Deadlines were tight. Expectations were high. Criticism was common, yet he rarely reacted emotionally. When feedback came, even harsh feedback, he listened calmly. He asked questions. He responded thoughtfully. Over time, people stopped trying to provoke him, not because he was intimidating, but because he was unshakable. What stood out was that his confidence didn't come from always being right. It came from being steady. He didn't rush to defend himself. He didn't explain himself unnecessarily. He didn't let temporary emotions dictate permanent behavior. That steadiness earned him respect without him asking for it. Many books describe emotional control as the ability to pause before reacting. That pause is small, sometimes only a few seconds, but it changes everything. When you pause, you regain choice. Instead of reacting automatically, you respond intentionally. Instead of being pulled into chaos, you stay grounded. This is where many people misunderstand emotional control. They think it means suppressing feelings or pretending nothing bothers them. That's not control. That's avoidance. Real emotional control begins with awareness. You notice what you're feeling without immediately obeying it. You allow emotions to exist without letting them run your behavior. A family member of mine struggled deeply with this for years. Any disagreement felt personal. Any criticism felt like rejection. Their emotions flared quickly, and relationships suffered as a result. Over time, they began studying ideas around emotional regulation and inner strength. They practiced pausing, breathing, observing, not reacting immediately. Slowly, conflicts became less intense. So confidence returned, not because life got easier, but because they gained control over how they responded. Books that build inner power emphasize one core principle. Emotions are signals, not commands. Feeling anger doesn't mean you must act on it. Feeling fear doesn't mean you must retreat. Feeling sadness doesn't mean you're weak. When you stop treating emotions as orders, you regain authority over yourself. For the listener right now, this principle is practical. The next time something triggers you, a comment, a message, a look, pause for 3 seconds. Breathe. Ask yourself a simple question. Is reacting right now serving the person I want to become? That question alone creates space, and in that space, you choose strength instead of impulse. One of the most powerful practices mentioned in books on emotional mastery is detachment. This detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means not tying your identity to every outcome or opinion. When you detach your self-worth from external validation, emotions lose their grip. You still care, but you're no longer controlled. I experienced this shift after repeatedly reacting in ways I later regretted. Defending myself unnecessarily, explaining when silence would have been stronger, reacting emotionally when patience would have served me better. Each reaction weakened my confidence because deep down, I knew I wasn't in control. When I started practicing restraint, something changed. My confidence became quieter, but stronger. This is why emotional control is the foundation of inner power. Without it, confidence is temporary. With it, confidence becomes stable. You stop fearing other people's opinions because they no longer dictate your internal state. You stop needing constant reassurance because you trust your ability to regulate yourself. The calmest person in the room often holds the most power, not because they dominate, but because they cannot be easily moved. Books on Stoicism highlight this repeatedly. When you master your reactions, you remove leverage from the world around you. For practical application, start small. Choose one emotional habit to work on this week. Maybe it's not reacting immediately to messages. Maybe it's staying silent instead of defending yourself. Maybe it's breathing before responding. These moments feel insignificant, but they add up. Each time you pause, you strengthen inner control. And each time you strengthen control, confidence follows. As we continue, remember this. Confidence built on emotion will always be unstable. Inner power built on control will not. When you learn to govern your reactions, you stop being at the mercy of circumstance, and when you stop being controlled from the outside, true confidence begins to take root within you. Chapter 3. Stop needing approval to feel confident. One of the fastest ways to lose confidence is to give other people control over how you see yourself. When your sense of worth depends on approval, confidence becomes fragile. It rises when you're praised and disappears when you're ignored, criticized, or misunderstood. Many people don't realize this is happening. They just feel anxious, hesitant, and unsure, without understanding why. The need for approval often looks harmless. You want to be liked. You want to avoid conflict. You want to be seen as reasonable, helpful, and agreeable. On the surface, these seem like good traits. But when approval becomes a requirement instead of a preference, it quietly drains your inner power. You start shaping your behavior around other people's reactions instead of your own values. I saw this clearly in a family member of mine. They were kind, thoughtful, and generous to a fault. They said yes even when they were exhausted. They avoided difficult conversations because they didn't want to disappoint anyone. Outwardly, they were well-liked. Internally, they were constantly anxious. Their confidence was low, not because they lacked ability, but because they rarely acted in alignment with what they actually wanted or needed. Books that focus on self-mastery describe this pattern in simple terms. When you outsource your self-worth, you lose authority over yourself. Approval becomes a substitute for self-respect, and the more you chase it, the less confident you feel, because deep down, you know your behavior isn't honest. Many people believe confidence means being admired, but real confidence doesn't come from admiration, and it comes from self-respect. And self-respect is built when your actions align with your boundaries. When you consistently ignore your own needs to gain approval, you send yourself a damaging message. Other people matter more than me. Over time, that message erodes confidence. I experienced this personally in subtle ways. There were times when I softened my opinions to avoid tension. Times when I explained myself too much, hoping to be understood. Times when I agreed to things I didn't want to do, simply to maintain harmony. Each time I felt a small internal conflict, and each time my confidence weakened slightly. Not because the situation was difficult, but because I didn't stand with myself. Books that build inner power emphasize a hard but freeing truth. You cannot be confident and constantly seek approval at the same time, and the two are incompatible. Confidence requires the willingness to be misunderstood. It requires accepting that not everyone will like you, and that this is not a problem to fix. A close friend of mine went through a powerful shift when he realized this. He used to measure his worth by how others responded to him. Praise energized him, silence discouraged him, criticism crushed him. After studying ideas around boundaries and self-respect, he began practicing something uncomfortable: saying no without justification. At first, it felt wrong, but over time something changed. His anxiety decreased, his decisions became clearer, his confidence stabilized. Not everyone liked the change, but he did. This is where many people get stuck. They fear that if they stop seeking approval, they'll become cold, selfish, or disconnected. Books on inner strength make an important distinction here. Letting go of approval does not mean disrespecting others. It means respecting yourself enough to act honestly. You can be kind without being compliant. You can be respectful without being submissive. One of the strongest signals of quiet confidence is restraint. Confident people don't rush to explain themselves. They don't argue to be understood by everyone. They don't over-justify their choices. They allow others to have opinions without needing to manage them. This restraint is not arrogance. It's emotional maturity. I noticed this trait in a colleague who had strong inner confidence. When questioned or challenged, he didn't become defensive. He didn't overtalk or prove his worth. He listened. He responded simply. And sometimes he didn't respond at all. That silence carried weight. It communicated self-trust. Over time, people stopped pushing him, not because he fought back, but because he didn't need their validation to stand firm. Books that explore Stoic philosophy often describe this as detachment from external validation. Detachment doesn't mean apathy. It means not tying your identity to outcomes you can't control, like other people's opinions. When you detach, you gain freedom. You're able to act according to principle instead of reaction. For the listener right now, this chapter invites a simple but powerful question. Where am I seeking approval instead of honoring my values? Maybe it's in relationships. Maybe it's at work. Maybe it's in how you speak or don't speak about what matters to you. Awareness is the first step. The practice here doesn't require dramatic change. Start small. Say no once this week without explaining yourself. Express an honest opinion calmly, even if it might not be popular. Pause before seeking reassurance. Notice how it feels to stand in that discomfort. That discomfort is not danger, it's growth. There's a reason books that build unshakable confidence return to this theme repeatedly. When you stop chasing approval, you reclaim energy. You stop performing and start living. Your confidence no longer rises and falls with feedback, because it's rooted in something more stable: self-alignment. This shift doesn't make life easier in every moment. Some people will resist the change, some relationships may feel strained, but what you gain is far more valuable. You gain internal consistency, you gain clarity, you gain confidence that doesn't depend on applause. As we move forward, remember this principle. Confidence grows when you stop needing permission to be yourself. Approval is external. Inner power is internal. When you choose self-respect over validation, confidence stops leaking and begins to solidify from the inside out. Chapter 4. Discipline creates quiet confidence. Most people associate confidence with personality. They believe confident people are naturally bold, outspoken, or charismatic. But when you look closely at those who carry real, lasting confidence, you notice something different. Their confidence doesn't come from how they talk. It comes from how they live. More specifically, it comes from discipline. Discipline is not exciting. It doesn't create instant results or emotional highs. That's why many people avoid it. But discipline does something far more powerful than motivation ever could. It builds quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself, defend itself, or seek reassurance. The kind that stays intact even when no one is watching. I used to think confidence came from feeling inspired. On days when I felt motivated, I showed up fully. On days when I didn't, everything felt harder. Over time, I realized how unreliable that system was. Motivation came and went. Confidence followed it. I felt strong one week and uncertain the next. Nothing was stable. Books that focus on self-mastery repeat this lesson clearly. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. Motivation depends on mood. Discipline depends on standards, and standards, when upheld consistently, create an internal sense of strength that emotions cannot provide. I saw this principle play out powerfully through a close friend of mine. He wasn't confident in the traditional sense. He didn't talk much. He didn't seek attention. But he lived by a strict personal routine. He exercised consistently. He worked when he said he would. He didn't negotiate with himself every morning. Over time, something changed about him. His posture shifted. His decisions became clearer. His presence felt grounded. He didn't try to be confident. He simply became it. What changed wasn't his personality. It was his relationship with himself. Every day he followed through, he reinforced self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of confidence. When you know you will do what you said you would do, you stop doubting yourself. You stop second-guessing your worth. You stop relying on external validation. Many books describe discipline as self-respect in action. When you hold yourself to standards, especially when no one is watching, you communicate something important to your own mind. I matter enough to be consistent. That message slowly reshapes how you carry yourself in the world. This is why discipline creates confidence even before results appear. You don't need success to feel grounded. You need alignment. When your actions match your intentions, confidence emerges quietly. You don't feel the need to prove anything because you're already proving it to yourself daily. A colleague I once worked with demonstrated this clearly. He wasn't the most talented person in the room, but he was the most consistent. He arrived prepared. He followed through. He didn't cut corners. Over time, people trusted him instinctively. His confidence wasn't loud, but it was undeniable. When he spoke, people listened, not because he demanded attention, but because his discipline had earned credibility. Books that build inner power emphasize that discipline is not about punishment. It's about identity. Every disciplined action reinforces the identity you're building. Skip commitments repeatedly, and you build an identity of avoidance. Honor them consistently, and you build an identity of reliability. Confidence follows identity, not the other way around. This also explains why discipline often feels uncomfortable at first. You're breaking a pattern of self-negotiation. You're teaching yourself that comfort is not the highest priority, and that discomfort is precisely what strengthens inner power. Each time you choose discipline over ease, you widen the gap between impulse and action. That gap is where control lives. I experienced this shift when I stopped relying on mood to decide how I showed up. I committed to a small set of non-negotiable habits. Nothing dramatic, just simple actions done consistently. At first, it felt restrictive, but over time, it became freeing. I no longer debated with myself. I no longer questioned whether I could trust my follow-through. Confidence stopped being something I chased. It became something I carried. This is an important distinction books make. Discipline doesn't limit freedom. It creates it. When your life is governed by impulse, you're constantly reacting. When it's governed by standards, you're directing. Direction builds confidence. Reaction weakens it. For the listener right now, the application is practical. Choose one area of your life where you've been inconsistent, not because you're incapable, but because you've been negotiating with yourself. Set one clear standard. Keep it simple, then honor it daily. Don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait to feel confident. Let discipline do the work for you. There's a reason confident people rarely talk about discipline. They don't need to. It shows. It shows in how they handle pressure. It shows in how they speak. It shows in how they move through uncertainty without panic. Discipline builds an internal stability that words cannot fake. This kind of confidence doesn't seek attention. It doesn't collapse under stress. It doesn't need constant reassurance. It comes from knowing that, regardless of mood or circumstance, and you will show up as the person you've committed to being. As we move forward, remember this principle. Motivation will fade, emotions will fluctuate, but discipline remains. And when discipline becomes part of who you are, confidence stops being something you chase and starts being something you quietly embody every single day. Chapter 5. Self-trust is the core of inner power. At the center of unshakable confidence lies one essential element: self-trust. Without it, confidence is fragile. With it, confidence becomes stable, quiet, and deeply rooted. You can lose approval, status, or even certainty about the outcome, but if you trust yourself, your inner power remains intact. Many people mistake self-trust for arrogance or stubbornness. It's neither. Self-trust is not believing you're always right. It's believing that whatever happens, you will handle it with integrity. When you trust yourself, you don't need constant reassurance. You don't need to check every decision against other people's opinions. You don't freeze when uncertainty appears. You move forward, knowing you can adapt. I didn't always have this. For a long time, I doubted my own decisions, and I overanalyzed everything. I asked for advice from too many people, hoping someone else would give me certainty. When outcomes didn't go as planned, I blamed myself harshly. Over time, that pattern eroded my confidence, not because I lacked ability, but because I didn't believe I could rely on my own judgment. Books that focus on inner strength point out a simple truth. Self-trust is built the same way trust with others is built, through consistency. Every time you follow through on your commitments, you strengthen it. Every time you abandon yourself to avoid discomfort, you weaken it. Self-trust is not a belief. It's a record. I saw this clearly in a close friend who struggled with indecision for years. He constantly changed direction. He started projects enthusiastically, then abandoned them when they became difficult. Each time he quit, and his confidence declined slightly. Eventually, he began to doubt every new idea, not because the ideas were bad, but because he no longer trusted himself to see them through. The turning point came when he committed to finishing one thing, just one, regardless of how he felt about it. The project wasn't life-changing, but finishing it restored something important. It reminded him that he could rely on himself. From that point on, his decisions became firmer. His confidence grew, not from success, but from follow-through. Books on self-mastery emphasize that inconsistency creates internal conflict. When your intentions and actions don't match, your mind loses faith in you. You may try to cover that gap with positive thinking, but deep down, you know the truth. Confidence cannot survive repeated self-betrayal. And I experienced this firsthand when I noticed how often I abandoned my own plans. Not because they were wrong, but because they became uncomfortable. Each time I did that, I felt less grounded. When I started committing to smaller, more realistic goals and finishing them, my confidence slowly returned. Not as excitement, but as stability. Another important lesson from these books is that self-trust grows through decision-making, not avoidance. Many people delay decisions because they fear making the wrong one. But avoiding decisions weakens confidence far more than making imperfect ones. Each decision, even flawed, teaches you something. Avoidance teaches you nothing except doubt. A colleague of mine embodied this lesson well. He made decisions quickly, not recklessly, but decisively. When things went wrong, he adjusted. So he didn't dwell on mistakes or seek excuses. Over time, people trusted him, not because he was always right, but because he took responsibility. That responsibility projected inner power. Self-trust also means standing by your values when it's inconvenient. It means choosing alignment over comfort. Books that build unshakable confidence often describe this as internal loyalty. When you are loyal to your values, your confidence becomes resilient. You stop needing external validation because your actions already confirm who you are. For the listener right now, this chapter offers a practical reflection. Where have you been abandoning yourself? Where have you been saying yes when you meant no? Starting things you never finish? Delaying decisions out of fear? These patterns don't make you weak, and they simply show where self-trust needs to be rebuilt. The practice is simple, but not easy. Choose one commitment this week and keep it. Choose one decision and stand by it. Accept the discomfort that comes with consistency. Each time you do, you send yourself a powerful message. I can be trusted. There's a reason books that focus on inner power return to this theme repeatedly. When you trust yourself, confidence no longer depends on circumstances. You can lose approval, make mistakes, and face uncertainty without collapsing internally. Self-trust acts as an anchor. As we move forward, remember this. Confidence is not believing everything will go well. It's believing that you will be there for yourself when it doesn't. When you stop abandoning yourself, inner power begins to grow. And once self-trust is restored, confidence becomes unshakable, because it's no longer built on hope, but on proof. Chapter 6. Learn to stand alone without feeling lonely. One of the greatest fears people carry is the fear of standing alone, not just physically, but emotionally. The fear of being unsupported, misunderstood, or disconnected often drives people to compromise their values, suppress their truth, and depend on others for validation. Over time, this fear quietly erodes confidence and weakens inner power. Many people confuse independence with isolation. They believe that standing alone means rejecting connection, becoming cold, or pushing others away. But books that build inner strength make an important distinction. True independence is not about avoiding relationships, it's about not needing them to feel whole. When you can stand alone peacefully, relationships become a choice, not a requirement. And I learned this lesson during a period of my life when I felt surrounded by people, yet deeply unsettled inside. I had conversations, commitments, and connections, but I didn't feel grounded. I realized I was using constant interaction as a distraction. Silence felt uncomfortable because it forced me to face my own thoughts. And that discomfort revealed how much I relied on external presence to feel stable. A close friend of mine experienced something similar in a more visible way. He stayed in relationships that no longer aligned with him, not because they were healthy, but because being alone felt terrifying. He accepted behavior he shouldn't have. He muted his opinions. He slowly lost confidence. Over time, the cost of avoiding loneliness became far greater than the cost of facing it. Books on self-mastery often describe solitude as a training ground. Not loneliness, but intentional time alone. Solitude removes distractions, it exposes internal noise, it forces honesty. When you're alone without escaping into stimulation, you begin to hear your own voice again. And that voice is essential to building inner power. The first time I intentionally spent time alone without distractions, it was uncomfortable. There was restlessness, doubt, a sense of emptiness. But as I stayed with it, something shifted. The discomfort faded. Clarity emerged. I began understanding my own patterns more clearly. That understanding brought stability, and stability brought confidence. A family member of mine underwent a similar shift after a major life change left them alone unexpectedly. At first, they felt lost, without constant company, or their insecurities surfaced. But instead of escaping, they leaned into learning how to be with themselves. They read books on inner strength and reflection. Over time, they developed calm, clarity, and a confidence that no longer depended on constant affirmation. Books that explore inner power emphasize that people who cannot be alone often become dependent. And dependence, while sometimes disguised as connection, weakens confidence. When you fear being alone, you tolerate situations that don't serve you. You cling to approval. You avoid necessary endings. All of these patterns drain inner strength. Standing alone does not mean rejecting others. It means developing a relationship with yourself that is stable enough to withstand silence. When you trust yourself, solitude becomes restorative instead of threatening. You stop running from yourself. And when you stop running, confidence begins to settle. This is why confident people often seem comfortable with silence. They don't rush to fill space. They don't seek constant stimulation. They don't fear their own thoughts. That comfort comes from self-connection, and self-connection is built through time spent alone intentionally. For the listener right now, this chapter invites a gentle challenge. Create space. Not isolation, but space. Turn off noise. Sit without distraction for a few minutes each day. Notice what comes up without judgment. This practice may feel uncomfortable at first, but discomfort is not danger. It's adjustment. One of the most powerful lessons from books on solitude is this. Loneliness is not the absence of people. It's the absence of connection with yourself. And when that connection is restored, being alone no longer feels empty. It feels grounded. A colleague I respected deeply embodied this principle. He was socially capable, well-liked, and engaged, but he never depended on company. He took time alone regularly. He reflected. He didn't rush decisions. When others panicked about being left out, he remained calm. His confidence came from internal alignment, not social presence. Standing alone also strengthens boundaries. When you're comfortable with yourself, you're less likely to tolerate disrespect. You're less likely to stay in situations out of fear. Books that focus on inner strength emphasize this repeatedly. The ability to walk away is power. And the ability to walk away comes from knowing you'll be okay alone. This doesn't mean life becomes easier, but it becomes clearer. You stop confusing noise with connection. You stop mistaking company for fulfillment. You begin choosing relationships that add to your life instead of filling a void. As we move forward, remember this principle. Inner power grows when you are at peace with your own presence. When you can stand alone without fear, confidence becomes stable. You no longer chase connection to avoid discomfort. You choose it from strength. Standing alone is not a weakness, it is a skill. And like all skills, it can be trained. When you learn to be at ease with yourself, the world loses its ability to shake you. That is the quiet confidence that books on inner power aim to build. And once you experience it, you carry it with you everywhere. Chapter 7. Confidence survives failures when ego is gone. For many people, confidence collapses the moment they fail. One mistake, one rejection, one visible loss, and suddenly they question everything about themselves. They replay the moment endlessly, criticize their decisions, and pull back from future risks. What breaks them is not the failure itself, but the meaning they attach to it. At the center of this problem is ego. Ego ties your self-worth to outcomes. It tells you that success means you are valuable, and failure means you are not. When confidence is built on ego, it becomes extremely fragile. It survives only as long as things go well. The moment life pushes back, confidence disappears. Books that build real inner power approach failure differently. They teach that failure is not a verdict on who you are. It is information. No, it is feedback. And when ego is removed from the equation, failure no longer destroys confidence, it strengthens it. I learned this lesson slowly and painfully. Earlier in my life, I took failure personally. If something didn't work out, I assumed it meant I wasn't good enough, smart enough, or capable enough. I tried to avoid situations where failure was possible. I stayed safe. But that safety came at a cost. My confidence shrank. Not because I failed too much, but because I avoided growth. I saw the opposite approach in a colleague I deeply respected. He experienced setbacks openly. Projects failed. Ideas were rejected, but he never collapsed inward. He reviewed what went wrong calmly, adjusted, and moved forward. There was no drama, no self-pity, no need to protect an image. Over time, his confidence became undeniable, and not because he avoided failure, but because failure no longer defined him. Books on stoicism and self-mastery emphasize this repeatedly. Ego demands perfection, inner power demands honesty. When ego is present, failure feels like a threat to identity. When ego is gone, failure becomes part of the process. You stop asking, "What does this say about me?" and start asking, "What can this teach me?" This shift changes everything. A close friend of mine struggled deeply with this before making a major breakthrough. He tied his self-worth entirely to performance. When things went well, he felt confident. When they didn't, he withdrew and became self-critical. After studying ideas around ego and resilience, he began separating his identity from outcomes. Instead of seeing failure as a reflection of who he was, he treated it as a data point. But slowly, his confidence stabilized. He stopped fearing mistakes, and when fear disappeared, progress accelerated. Ego also creates another trap: comparison. When confidence is ego-based, you constantly measure yourself against others. Someone else's success feels like your failure. Someone else's confidence feels like your weakness. Books that build inner power make it clear that comparison is poison to confidence. It pulls your attention outward and places your worth in someone else's hands. When ego is removed, comparison loses its power. You stop asking whether you're better or worse than others. You focus on whether you're improving relative to who you were yesterday. That internal focus builds confidence that doesn't fluctuate based on external rankings. I experienced this shift when I stopped trying to prove myself after setbacks. And instead of explaining, defending, or justifying failures, I allowed them to exist without commentary. I learned. I adjusted. I moved on. That restraint was uncomfortable at first, but it was freeing. Confidence stopped being about looking competent and started being about becoming capable. Books on inner strength also highlight another important point. Failure exposes ego. When you react defensively, make excuses, or blame others, ego is in control. When you take responsibility calmly, ego loosens its grip. And responsibility, when taken without self-attack, builds real confidence. A family member of mine demonstrated this transformation clearly. After a major professional failure, they could have blamed circumstances or retreated entirely. Instead, they acknowledged their mistakes honestly and worked to improve quietly. Done no dramatic announcements, no victim mindset. Over time, they rebuilt not just their position, but their confidence. It was stronger than before because it was no longer dependent on being flawless. This is why books that build unshakable confidence emphasize humility. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. When ego fades, resilience grows. You stop protecting an image and start building substance. For the listener right now, this chapter invites an important reflection. How do you respond to failure? Do you collapse inward? Do you avoid situations where failure is possible? Do you define yourself by outcomes you can't fully control? These patterns are not personal flaws. They are signs of ego-driven confidence. The practice here is simple but challenging. The next time you fail, resist the urge to explain yourself. Resist the urge to label the failure as proof of inadequacy. Instead, ask one honest question. What does this teach me? Then move forward. Books that focus on inner power teach that confidence becomes unshakable when your identity is rooted in effort, values, and growth, not results. When ego steps aside, failure loses its ability to wound you deeply. It may still sting, but it no longer defines you. This doesn't mean failure becomes easy, but it becomes useful. As we move toward the final chapter, remember this principle. Ego breaks under pressure, but inner power adapts. When you stop tying your worth to outcomes, confidence stops collapsing when things go wrong. It becomes flexible, resilient, and deeply rooted. And that is the kind of confidence that survives anything life puts in your way. Chapter 8. Becoming Unshakable is a daily practice. Many people search for a final breakthrough moment, a realization, a book, a single decision that will make them confident forever. But books that build real inner power are clear about one thing. Unshakable confidence is not a destination, it is a daily practice. This is where most people lose momentum. They understand the ideas intellectually. They feel inspired for a short time. Then life gets busy, uncomfortable, or repetitive, and old patterns return. Confidence fades, not because the ideas were wrong, but because they were not practiced consistently. Inner power is built the same way physical strength is built. Not through one intense workout, but through repeated effort over time. Miss a day, and nothing collapses. Quit entirely, and everything weakens. Confidence works the same way. It grows quietly through repetition, and it erodes quietly through neglect. I learned this lesson when I assumed understanding was enough. I had read the books. I knew the principles, but I didn't live them consistently. Some days I acted with discipline and self-respect. Other days I avoided discomfort and justified it. Over time, I noticed something important. On the days I practiced these principles, I felt grounded. On the days I didn't, doubt crept back in. The difference wasn't talent or intelligence, it was consistency. A close friend of mine experienced a similar realization. He went through a period of intense growth after discovering ideas around discipline, emotional control, and self-trust. For a while, his confidence was strong, but when he stopped practicing intentionally, old insecurities resurfaced. Not because he failed, but because he stopped training. Once he returned to daily practice, his confidence stabilized again. Books that focus on inner strength emphasize this truth repeatedly. Confidence is not maintained by motivation, but by habits. Motivation fluctuates. Habits remain. When your daily actions reinforce self-respect, confidence follows naturally. When they don't, confidence weakens, no matter how much you know. Daily practice doesn't mean perfection. It means commitment. It means choosing a small set of principles and living them repeatedly. Acting with integrity when it's inconvenient. Pausing before reacting. Keeping promises to yourself. Accepting discomfort without drama. These actions may feel small, but together they shape identity. Now, it's one of the most powerful lessons from these books is that identity is built through repetition. You don't wake up one day confident. You wake up one day realizing that your habits have made confidence inevitable. When your daily behavior aligns with who you want to be, self-doubt loses its grip. I saw this clearly in a colleague who transformed over time. He didn't change overnight. He didn't announce his growth. He simply showed up differently every day. He responded calmly. He followed through consistently. He didn't seek approval. Months later, his confidence was undeniable. Not because he tried to be confident, but because his daily actions had reshaped how he saw himself. This is why books on inner power warn against relying on inspiration. Inspiration is emotional. It fades. Practice is structural. It builds stability. And when confidence is tied to structure, it becomes unshakable. For the listener right now, this chapter is about integration. You've heard ideas about action, emotional control, approval, discipline, self-trust, solitude, and ego. The question now is not whether you understand them. It's whether you're willing to practice them daily. The practice doesn't need to be complicated. In fact, simplicity is essential. Choose a few core behaviors and commit to them. Maybe it's starting the day with one disciplined action. Maybe it's pausing before reacting emotionally. Maybe it's spending 10 minutes alone without distraction. These practices compound. Another important idea emphasized in these books is patience. Confidence built correctly takes time. There is no rush. When you stop measuring progress emotionally and start measuring it behaviorally, confidence becomes easier to sustain. You don't ask, "Do I feel confident today?" You ask, "Did I act with integrity today?" The answer to that question matters far more. I had to relearn this repeatedly. On days when I felt uncertain, I returned to basics. I focused on what I could control, my actions, my responses, my standards. Each time, confidence returned quietly. Not as excitement, but as steadiness. Books that build unshakable confidence also emphasize compassion toward yourself. Practice does not mean harsh self-judgment. Growth requires honesty, not punishment. When you fall short, you don't collapse or quit. You adjust and continue. That ability to continue is part of inner power. A family member of mine embodied this lesson after struggling with consistency. Instead of criticizing themselves for setbacks, they recommitted calmly. Over time, their confidence stopped swinging wildly. It became stable because it was no longer tied to perfection. This is the final shift. Confidence is no longer something you chase. It becomes something you maintain, like hygiene, like health, like strength. You don't expect it to last forever without attention. You practice because it matters. As we close this chapter, remember this principle. Unshakable confidence is built through daily alignment. Small actions, repeated consistently, create inner power that circumstances cannot destroy. You don't need to change who you are. You need to show up as who you are, every day, with intention. When confidence becomes a practice instead of a feeling, it stops being fragile. It becomes part of your foundation. And once that foundation is strong, the world loses its ability to shake you. As we come to the end of this audiobook, take a moment to pause and reflect, not on how you feel right now, but on what you've truly understood. Throughout this journey, we didn't talk about confidence as a personality trait or a mood you need to chase. We talked about confidence as something far more solid, something built through action, discipline, emotional control, self-trust, and daily practice. Real confidence is not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't disappear when things go wrong. It stays. We explored how confidence is built, not felt. How emotional control gives you inner power when life becomes unpredictable. How seeking approval slowly drains your strength. And how discipline creates a quiet, grounded confidence that speaks for itself. We talked about self-trust as the core of inner power, about learning to stand alone without feeling lonely, and about how confidence survives failure when ego no longer defines you. And finally, we saw that becoming unshakable is not a one-time realization, but a daily practice. If there's one message to take away from this entire audiobook, it's this. Confidence is not something you wait for. It's something you earn through consistent alignment with who you want to be. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need approval. You don't need to feel ready. You need to act with integrity, even when it's uncomfortable, even when no one is watching. Now, the most important part begins. Not listening, but applying. Knowledge alone won't change your life. Practice will. Start small. Choose one principle from this audiobook and commit to it. Keep one promise to yourself each day. Now pause before reacting. Say no when you mean no. Create space to be alone with your thoughts. Finish what you start. These actions may seem simple, but they compound. And over time, they build something powerful inside you. Don't aim to feel confident tomorrow. Aim to act honestly today. Don't try to impress anyone. Try to respect yourself. Confidence grows quietly when your actions and values align. And when that alignment becomes a habit, confidence stops being fragile. It becomes part of who you are. If you've stayed with this audiobook until the end, thank you. Truly, your time and attention matter. The fact that you're here tells me you're not looking for quick motivation or empty hype. You're looking for something deeper and more lasting. That intention alone sets you apart from most people. Remember, you don't need to become someone else to build inner power. You don't need to be louder, tougher, or more aggressive. You need to be more grounded, more honest, more consistent with yourself. That's where unshakable confidence comes from. I encourage you to revisit these ideas often. Let them sink in. Let them guide your actions. And when you struggle, as everyone does, return to the basics. Confidence is rebuilt the same way it's built the first time, through small, disciplined actions taken daily. Before you go, if you know someone who is quietly struggling with self-doubt, uncertainty, or a lack of inner strength, share this video with them, not as advice, but as support. Sometimes, the right message at the right time can make a real difference in someone's life. Thank you for listening, for reflecting, and for being willing to grow. I'll see you in the next video.